debrief this week. Um, I just want to say a couple things as we transition from Kelly doing this to other people. First, want to give a quick thank you to Ned for stepping in last week. The timing of Kelly leaving and me being in Italy for a week kind of made that week a little bit tough, and I'm doing my best to like catch up on like the details of all the tickets. But I just want to say ahead of time that that I'm not to the level of specificity and detail that Kelly had on each and every ticket. So if you're super interested in that stuff, I invite you to go into Jira and look at it. You can read it all yourself. You don't need to wait for this weekly debrief to get this information. I want to start there. We're in, so this is update 83. We're in sprint 34. That's in progress. We'll finish the sprint this week. And I'm going to highlight some of the things that are going on that I think are worthy of noting. And then Greg, at the end, if I leave anything off, please make sure you bring it up. So first thing is I want to talk about is a couple of the developers from the consensus team have come over to help out with some Erlang issues related to the ability for us to produce the Genesis deployment with all of the Rev Vault creations. And so this has been an effort that there's been a few hiccups with regards to being able to, we're seeing some out of memory issues with regards to creating a Erlang contract that has all those.
Is anyone else hearing Chris?
Work.
He's lagging.
Doing two things. One is so part of the Erlang. Okay, can somebody fill the space for 30 seconds while I switch over to a different network?
Yeah, sure. No worries. Yeah, I can give a little bit more color on this. So with respect to the Genesis Vault creation, what we're seeing is a sort of classic space-time trade-off. So if we unbridle the system so that everything runs in parallel, we hit an out of memory error. And if so that's on one end. If you sequentialize it, then it just simply takes too long. So the simplest resolution, one that Joe is running an experiment on right now, is to just run it in some batches. So about 1,000 updates to the vault map at a time should do the trick. And later we can figure out how to squash down the memory representation so that it doesn't, so that even larger chunks don't have to swamp the machine. Of course, on the nodes that ultimately the COP will be deploying as backbone nodes, we'll have terabytes of memory. And so these kinds of things, we can really unleash a lot of concurrency and parallelism without fear of out of memory errors. But for smaller devices such as the testing environment, where Joe is doing locally, or even on some of the larger DevNet and testnet machines, running out of memory is still an issue, and so batching has to be done. You want to? Are you ready to pick it up from there, Chris?
I'm back. Can you guys hear me okay now? Is it better?
Yeah, much better. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry. I was on a cellular network. Now I'm on Wi-Fi. So hopefully this will remain better. Okay. So as Greg talked about, like the details of that, the thing I just wanted to highlight from a progress perspective is it did pull in some development resource away from like consensus for a little bit. So that is one thing that's underway. The next thing I want to highlight is testnet is back open and available. We had an issue where we were seeing an out of memory, kind of a catastrophic failure. We have made some changes. There were some changes made to RSpace and a couple other things that we believe might have improved that particular out of memory issue, but we don't have an actual smoking gun for that one. So, but testnet is back up and running today. without the out of memory problem that we were seeing before. If we see it again, we will investigate that. We are seeing right now, we just noticed this today, that proposed times are taking a long time. So the team is investigating why that is happening. But so if you happen to get on testnet, you will notice that proposed time is taking a little bit longer than it should. But so that covers like some of what Node team was in helping with that out of memory problem that we're seeing, as well as the SRE team was working on that in the last couple sprints. The other thing that the SRE team has done is they created the sandbox testnet. And I'm just going to briefly give a shout out to this, and we're going to have more details on it in the next debrief next week. But the purpose of this sandbox testnet is kind of twofold. One is it's an environment where we can collect community created tests and the tools necessary for developers to debug the problems that come out of those tests more easily, but also as an effort to bring the community in to be more involved with the testing of RChain. And so I really want to give a thanks to Rao and Steve Henley for pushing this. Rao's going to do a more in-depth coverage of this next debrief. But I just wanted to highlight, if you're interested in testing and helping with testing, there's a channel on Discord called Sandbox Testnet, and you can communicate with the team that's involved with that. Any questions so far? Hold up.
Silence is golden.
Yeah, I'm seeing something on. Sorry, I'm seeing one in chat, and I'm just trying to make sure I can address that. It was discussed in the community hangout that during the rock to rev conversion, we will add a suffix to out Ethereum.
It must mean our Ethereum private key.
Yeah, now that we're using the same elliptic curve as Bitcoin Ethereum, would we still need to change to add a suffix to the private key in order to do the rock rev?
Yeah, so you won't touch the private keys. The keys themselves are not changed in any way, but the rev address, I'm not sure if this is what you're referring to, but the rev address is created by starting with the public key and walking it through some steps to turn it into a rev address. And the steps it's walked through, the first couple steps are the same exact steps as Ethereum addresses. And then the last few steps are unique to RChain. So you will be able to use your Ethereum key pair for the rock address that's on Ethereum and use that same private key to spend the equivalent rev address that ends up over on RChain. Does that make sense?
So that's a little different than my understanding. So did something change?
It depends on from when to when.
So what I've been telling people, my understanding all along was that you had your private key, and then when the rock to rev conversion was complete, there was a suffix that got added to your private key so you can get your rev.
Yeah. So that was never, I'm not sure where you got that information there, but you don't ever add suffixes to the private key. The private key, it's mathematically, you can't change it, right? It is what it is. And so what changes is just the address format that we manipulate the public key to create the address for. So, but the key pair themselves are the same key pair. So the key pair you have on Ethereum will be the key pair you have on RChain. That's the most important piece of information to remember.
Only for the public address.
The key pairs are the same. The public addresses, remember, aren't keys. The public addresses are just a public representation of the public key side of that key pair. that make sense?
Okay, I'm thinking then why can't I keep then why do I have to have my rock in a public wallet like my Ether wallet, and why can't I use my ledger?
Different question.
Okay.
But and a good question. You if you use a ledger, you need to have a way to sign RChain transactions with your ledger. That's the only piece that's missing.
Okay.
Got it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. So I apologize to anybody who I gave wrong information to, and it may be good to maybe set up a meeting, and maybe now's not the time. I mean, definitely not the time in this meeting, but maybe as we get closer to the conversion, we could schedule a meeting and have a wider discussion.
Yeah, well, actually, our intent. So I'd like to do it way before that. So we have, as part of testnet 2, the requirement to do a walking through of the rock to rev conversion. So it has to be well understood at that point, Ned. So maybe you and I could talk offline just to make sure we're in sync, so that we can help make sure the right docs are available to the people that are walking through it there. Because we want people to walk through that process on testnet many, many times before they do it in real life on the pubnet.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And again, apologies to anybody who I may have confused by my own misunderstanding. So yeah, so Chris, you and I will get together. We'll work on that.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for asking that question. Any other questions to what I've covered thus far? So again, I just want to thank Rao for stepping in Kelly's absence. That's been awesome. I do want to give an update that we are interviewing people for that PM position. I will say that we had. Sorry, I'm trying to watch chat as I'm talking. We had a great candidate last week. Greg probably will give more detail on that, so I don't want to spoil any good news there. But
no, feel free. Go ahead. I mean, I'm sure people are tired of hearing me yammer away.
Fair enough then. So we do have a pipeline of people that we're interviewing in addition to that. But that first, one of the first people that we talked to was actually one of the most promising, I think. So I'm excited that could result very quickly in having Kelly's position filled. So with that, I want to encourage you all in the meantime to be patient with me, especially as I can go deep on this technology and I'm helping on all those things, but I don't have the level of detail on tickets that Kelly had. And I'm trying my best to come up to speed so that when we're having these discussions, I will be able to talk to detail on each and every ticket, but I'm not quite there yet. So in the meantime, I really encourage you to if you're interested, get into Jira and look and see what we're doing, because that's where we exchange all the information anyway. So with that, Greg, did I leave anything off?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, at this level of detail, I think this is about right. We should just double check and see if anyone has any questions about what we've said so far.
I will say there will be a community test session tomorrow, same time as always. I've said this before, but it's my desire to keep that Thursday session continuously running, so that everybody can just count on that hour being used for testing. And it's open for anybody that's interested in joining. And we sometimes we come with a sort of canned what we're going to do, and sometimes it's open to who shows up and what questions they ask. Tomorrow will be actually NetZipper from the community will be helping drive that one. And so if you are interested in just kind of learning more about what's going on with Sandbox Testnet, I would encourage you to show up to that session tomorrow. With that then, if I don't see any questions in chat, I'm going to yield the floor.
Okie doke. Thank you so much. So that was a great update. And so lots more technical stuff is going on. Artur caught some some bugs that were associated with the cost accounting. I'm really glad that we have such diligent people on the team. It's really great. Moving on to some of the exciting business stuff. So people may have seen that we ran an AMA with the Buy Hold exchange, and that was very well received by the Chinese community and others. So I encourage folks to check that out. And that is going to sort of stand in lieu of our RCast this week. Derek is on vacation. We'll return to the RCast next week, but we had that. And then also we conducted an interview with Blockbeat this morning. So that article will come out. There was several different folks on the interview, and they asked a lot of good questions. We had a lot of good back and forth, and hopefully that will come out in the not too distant future. So a lot of good technical and business questions. I think people are really beginning to resonate with the sort of the why of RChain, and I think it shows. Another piece of good news, as people have probably heard, we signed a contract with Mike Stay. So Mike is now officially a part of the team and will help out with Rolang and other related development. So in particular, we're going to do a quick rewrite of the registry into Rolang, and Mike will be helping out with that. So we're excited to have Mike back on the team, and I think in general it sort of marks a turn for the better for RChain, in terms of we're getting lots of engagement from multiple funds, and many people are starting to get really interested. I think one of the things that was most interesting to me was I was speaking with one of the funds that has expressed a fairly deep interest at this point, and they have about 100 different companies that are attempting to build applications on blockchain, and they're all stymied. They really can't. They can't go much further because the performance of blockchain technology to date is not where it needs to be in order to support realistic applications. And so so they're looking for a technology like RChain, which has the trust model of Bitcoin and Ethereum, but offers a much greater performance. And so that's the bill that one of the bills that RChain fits, and so there's a lot of excitement about that, especially from funds that are funding applications. Any questions about that?
Hey Greg, when's Mike's first day officially as when will he start attending stand up and whatnot?
I was hoping he'd be on stand up this morning, but I think there might have been a snafu. Should be maybe Friday. He'll come on.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then let's see. Let's think about other stuff. Okay, so I did have a good conversation. I'll talk about this more on the closed door session, but our council has expressed to me that they have found enough evidence in terms of precedents and other statements made in public that having essentially the one of the main outcomes of IOB5 places the ROC token at a serious risk for being considered a security. So that brief is now underway, and we should have it in the next few days. So they had to go through, you know, a lot of research and sort of internal discussion and debate before they felt comfortable writing that brief. But they have expressed to me over the phone that they do feel that they, you know, they're in the process of writing the brief now. So we do have legal opinion from counsel that IOB5 places the ROC token at risk for being a security. And in fact, the REV token as well for being a security. And what that does is it severely limits it decelerates the token, because there's now all kinds of compliance hoops that any sort of transactions or trades have to go through. There are only certain kinds of venues where securities can be traded. So that would essentially, it would mean if we left things as they are, it would mean very serious exposure for the co-op. So just want to let people know that that's the case, and we do have the legal precedent for that. We can talk a little bit more about that on the closed door session, but that's the major update from that. Any questions on anything that I've said so far? Okay, moving right along. Yes.
I would just like to say that the regulatory climate.
Is this a comment that was better? Go ahead.
You know, it is uncertain, but what is certain is that the expectation was that we would have mainnet in January, and we would have the token worth 55 cents.
Yeah, agreed. Neither would have happened, exactly.
And this is what IOB5 was based on. And that situation has changed. And the co-op needs the ability to sell rock in order to ensure that it makes it through Venus. So that IOB5 has to be changed. We need to, you know, regardless of the regulatory situation, it's an existential issue.
No, I agree with you 100%. But let's have that conversation in the closed door session. Your comments are well taken and absolutely understood. I'm in 100% agreement with you. But let's keep that business debate and discussion to the closed door sessions. But thank you for your comments. I really appreciate that. Okay, so we have, trying to think, there was one other update, but it's not coming to me right now. Are there any other questions, comments on any of the threads that are happening that people want to know about?
I have a question, but I prefer to take it offline. Perhaps we can maybe hang in this room for maybe 5 minutes after the live stream ends, because I don't think it's sensible to have
sure,
my
yeah,
question blasted on live stream. So
yeah, that's totally fine. I'm for that. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, we can call it there and stop the live stream, and then if you have a question, we can take it there.